All right. Good morning, Miss Cook. How are you doing today?
Morning. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Let's just get started with our interview type thing, whatever these are called. Very informal. So I just want to ask you some questions about your department. First, let's just talk about what your department is and what you do. Tell us about student health.
Well, we have two clinics. One is located on the Dahlonega campus. We have another one here on the Gainesville campus. We're in building 23, and it's open and can be used interchangeably by the students for any eligible student during that current semester. And our hours of operation are Monday through Friday in the mornings from 8 to 12. In the afternoon, it is from 1:30 to 3:30, Monday through Thursday, and then 1:30 to 3 on Fridays. And summertimes it varies a little bit. It's pretty much the same schedule, except for on Friday, we're open from 8 to 12.
Awesome. You touched a little bit on how many people or which people can access student health. Can you touch a little bit more on that? Are there any exceptions? Are there any students who are enrolled in UNG but may not be able to use student health?
Yes, as far as eligibility, the majority of the students on the Gainesville campus will be eligible because they're able to access it through the health fee, which is a mandatory charge, which is bundled in on their tuition statement, currently set at $65. Um, the students who are sometimes exempt from that is if they're totally online or they're doing internships. So if they're a current student of that semester, they can still opt in and pay the student health fee. They're just going to have to go to the business office and pay for the fee there.
Okay, now that you touched on some of the fees, I want to ask, does it cost to actually visit health services per visit? What if I don't have health insurance? Am I going to have to pay for medicine or whatever I'm recommended to take out of pocket?
All right. So um, as far as cost, we don't bill or file insurance. So that what gets you access to the clinic is the student health fee. And so there's no copays to see a provider. You can come as often as you want to the clinic. Um, by that health fee, the only time it'll cost to see a provider is if you're having a physical. That's a $35, currently a $35 charge that will be charged to their Banner account. The other things that generate cost would be immunizations, except for the flu vaccine. The flu vaccine, will get it in sometime in September or August. And as soon as it's available, we will advertise it, and any eligible student can get that without paying an additional charge. The other charges deal with laboratory. So there's no charge for in-house labs. So that's like strep, flu, mono, COVID, glucose, hemoglobin, urine dip, and urine pregnancy. The charge will come if we have to do out labs. So we're having to send it to a laboratory. They're going to bill us, but it's kept very, very cost contained. So something like urine cultures or throat cultures will cost somewhere around like $15. So it's not cost prohibitive for the out labs. Again, that's charged the Banner account, so you don't need to have any cash in hand when you come to student health. We, as far as medications, we will be scripting medications. So the student will be responsible for payment at the pharmacy through their insurance. We do have like GoodRx cards to help discount for people who don't have insurance.
That's awesome. I didn't actually know about all of those ways that you guys actually help students to afford medicine, which is really important because I've been sick sometimes and I go to my doctor and it's such a much longer process sometimes and
Mhm.
not as easy. So
Yeah, it's still important to have your insurance cards, even though we don't deal with insurance, but it helps me in two ways. If we cannot help you, sometimes me seeing your insurance card allows me to be able to direct what your next step is. And then The insurance also can tell me, how much is it going to cost you, your generic, and whether you're HMO versus open access can lead to different issues with doing prescriptions. So it's always good to have a copy of your prescription card, even though we don't file our bill.
Gotcha, gotcha. And you've touched a little bit on immunization and other services that your office or your department provides. Can you
Mhm.
touch a little bit more on that? If I'm a student and I'm coming in, what kind of services can you provide for me, even if I'm not necessarily sick, but I need like lab work done or something like that? What other kind of things can you guys help with?
Well, we have several different services. A very popular service is self-care. That's for the student who does not need to see a medical provider. Maybe they just woke up, they have a headache, they just want some Tylenol or ibuprofen, or they got a scrape and they just want a Band-Aid. So self-care is stocked with over-the-counter products and over-the-counter medications. Students are allowed to get 3 items from self-care whenever they come in. They just have to provide their 900 number to the front office to be sure that they're eligible for that service. Another service we have is the immunization clinic. We usually have the more common immunizations that the students are needing, like hepatitis B, tetanus, the TB skin test. We also do the lab work for certain immunizations. Those will be out labs. But some students, particularly the nursing students or the physical therapy students, need the immunity titers, so show that they're immune to measles, mumps, rubella, hepatitis B, or varicella, which is chickenpox. Or they need the quantiferon TB Gold test. So we do that through that clinic. We also, another service is the men's and women's clinic. That is for the students, or sorry, the men's and women's clinics for women's annual exams, PAPS, birth control. It is for sexually transmitted illness testing, both for men and women. And it is also for problems of a more sensitive nature for men and women. And then the last service we have is the general clinic. That is for the student who needs to see a medical provider. So we sort of operate like a urgent care in the fact that we see acute, minor illnesses and injury. So again, your strep, flu, COVID, mono, bronchitis, sinus infections, urinary tract infections. You woke up that morning, you have a fever and a strange rash, and you just don't know what's going on. So we can evaluate that. If you fall, twist your ankle, or we have a lot of skateboarders on both the Dahlonega and the Gainesville campus. They get that lovely road rash that has to be cleaned out and bandaged. So that's the kind of things that we do in the general clinic. We do not manage chronic conditions. That doesn't mean I can't see an acute flare of a chronic condition. So if you're have an asthmatic and they're having a breathing vent, I can still see them, evaluate them, see if they need a breathing treatment in office, still script them antibiotics and steroids if they so need it. I'm just not going to do the ongoing maintenance and refills for those prescriptions. So the student needs to maintain their relationship with their primary care provider or a specialist for chronic conditions.
No, that is a lot to cover in just one department, one office. I also wanted to ask, you touched a little bit on like women's and men's health and a lot of different ways that you can get care. As a student, let's say that I don't want my parents or my legal guardians to know about me coming to student health for whatever. Is there confidentiality? Is there a way to ensure that my information won't be shared with anybody else, either on campus or family or whoever?
Okay. So that's a very important question, and it's going to depend upon age. So if you are a minor, you're under the age of 18, I actually have to permission from your parents or your guardian in order to see you in the clinic. And that gives them also the legal right to view your medical records. The exception would be in something sexual in nature. So you don't need permission for that, or and they cannot access the information if it's sexual in nature. Now for 18 and older, then unless it's a life and death situation, you have to give me permission to speak with your parents or spouse. And that's going to be done more on a visit per visit basis, because while you may be okay with me talking with someone about one particular visit, you may not be at a future visit. So we'll take it visit by visit as far as getting permission from the student. The other thing you need to consider is actually the banner accounts. So I touched on earlier that our charges go to the banner account. And then we've had some students in the past very worried because they have given their parents access to monitor their banner accounts. So when we put a charge, you won't see what we charge for. So if you did STI testing, it's not going to say STI testing. It's just going to have student health. It's going to have the charge. Unfortunately, but that can still lead to those questions of like, well, why were you at student health? What's the charge for? So we have worked with students in the past. If they will let us know at the time of the office visit, the time that we're creating the charge, that they have an issue with their charges being seen on banner, then we can work with that student to try to hide that posting. But they need to let us know. That's an issue.
Gotcha. That's very useful information. I didn't learn about that until like my second or third visit to like the student health department, and I was like, why isn't my mom able to access? They're like, well, because you're over 18 and your mom, is your mom, but at the end of the day, if you don't give us permission to tell her things, we can't share anything. And I was like, wow, that's completely different from when I was in high school. Everything was like automatically sent to her and she knew everything. So yeah, I think that's important for students to know and understand when they're going into your offices.
Yes.
Which brings me to my next question. Let's say I want to schedule an appointment. Do you guys have a place where you can do that? Do you guys have telehealth appointments, or is it all in person? What does it look like if I want to go to your office?
We do not have telehealth. We do prefer appointments. There's several different ways. If you're going to call, you can call, but make sure you're calling the clinic that you want to be seen at. So Gainesville versus Dahlonega. And or if you would, and it's better to identify when you call, like if you call the Dahlonega clinic, they would schedule you there versus the Gainesville. So it's better to call the clinic that you want to be seen at. So there's no confusion. We also have the online portal. If you go to the student health website, there's a portal link in there. What's important to know about the portal is you only see 2 days of appointments listed. You can't book something 2 weeks out. So, but you also need to be aware that what you see in the portal, if it's filled up, it doesn't mean that we are totally filled up. There's another area that we hold in reserve for scheduling that allows for same-day office visits. So if it looks full, call. The other thing about the portal is that we prefer, if you need to see a provider, that's one thing. That's a good place to make it. But if you just need like a lab, or you just need a physical, or you just need an immunization, we prefer you call the clinic for that appointment, because that goes into a different area of our scheduling. Now, while we prefer the appointments, we do welcome walk-ins. They just need to be aware that it's going to depend on the schedule availability at the time that they walk in.
Gotcha, very useful. And my last question is something you've sort of touched on already, but I want to make sure that students understand or that know, because I didn't know this until way later on down my UNG journey. What is the difference again between like having a hold in banner from student health and having actual charges? And how do I know how to handle those two?
Okay, so through a banner, there's 2 different things. The charges for the labs and stuff like that, I don't really look into Banner, so I don't really know exactly what the charges look like. What you should just be seeing though is there's a charge for student health and a money amount. That would be a charge that needs to be paid, that needs to be settled in the business office. We don't do anything monetary in student health. If you have a hold, a charge creates a hold, but the other hold would be for immunizations. And that's the more important hold that you need to be aware of, because it'll either say incomplete, which means we have never received your immunizations, or it's going to say incomplete and a qualifier like expired tetanus or needs second varicella. That means we've received your immunizations, there's just something missing or it's incomplete in some fashion. And we get a lot of frantic calls right before they're going to register for their second semester because of that hold. So you're allowed one grace registration per University of Georgia without having your immunizations filed and complete with student health. I don't know exactly when the hold comes into play. I think it's like a month after you start your first semester. But if they're not received or incomplete, the hold goes into place. And unfortunately, we cannot lift that until we receive them and they are complete. And we process them very quickly. So if we get them in, usually they're processed within 1 to 2 business days of our receipt. So you need to check Banner for a hold, and then once you turn them in a day or two, check it again and make sure that they're complete. Because I really feel for the students when they call us panicked because they got to get that class and they can't register, or they can't get their grades, or they can't drop ad because there's a hold. But unfortunately, we can't lift the hold once it goes into place unless we have those immunizations and they're complete.
Gotcha. Awesome. So we have covered what your office does, what services you offer, where the students can find you. Follow-up questions. I think we're good. I want to thank you very much for your time talking to me, explaining everything about your department, how students can get the help that they need. I wish I could have had this when I was a first year student and known more about it, because I kind of learned as I went, as I started going. So I'm hoping that with this, students will be able to feel less like it's a mystery what your office does and how to get the help that they need. So I want to thank you for your time and sharing that with me today. So yeah,
Thank you.
no problem. All right, I hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll
You
see you.
too.
All right, bye.